This is the Pixel 8 Pro, and this is the iPhone 15 Pro Max. We're going to compare portrait mode, cinematic mode, and all three lenses. Then we're going to assign a winner in every single category and break down my comprehensive reasoning as a professional photographer. This comparison will focus mostly on photography, so beyond cinematic mode, I won't be commenting on stabilization, audio, slow motion, or any of the other video functions. Let's jump in. The first thing we're going to compare is portrait mode, and for every category we compare, I want you to guess which picture is which. First up, here's picture number 1 and picture number 2. If you guessed that picture number 2 was taken with the iPhone, you got it right. Next, we have picture number 3 and 4. Picture number 3 was taken with the iPhone. And finally, we have picture number 5 and 6. Picture number 6 was taken with the iPhone. So who do I think is the winner in this category? Well, my initial impressions are that it looks pretty close. Both phones produce a very clean gradient blur, which looks believable under good lighting conditions. Both phones also let you make full adjustments to the picture by saving the depth mapping information while you're shooting. But overall, I thought that the iPhone 15 Pro Max did a better job with edge detection under more challenging conditions. When we zoom into this shot of the bench, we can see that the iPhone manages to correctly distinguish the difference between the subject and the background, whereas the Pixel 8 Pro was a lot more inconsistent. And I found this to be a common trend while I was shooting. Now on top of that, the iPhone 15 Pro Max also allows you to shoot with a wider field of view while using the rear-facing cameras. So to compensate for this while I was shooting with the Pixel 8 Pro, I had to take a few steps back from my subject. Some of you might think that this doesn't matter, but I completely disagree. The more you zoom in to take a picture, the more you end up compressing the background and losing the surrounding details in the environment. We'll have a look at this set of pictures. The size of the subject is the exact same in each one, but the background slowly begins to compress and disappear as I zoom in. And again, if we go back to our example, we can see the size of the bench in both of these pictures is almost the exact same, but the iPhone captures more of the elements in the scene. For example, the tree trunk, the building, and the car driving by. As a professional photographer, I generally find this can make for some very striking pictures when combined with a shallow depth of field. Also worth mentioning is that the iPhone 15 Pro Max supports using the 5x telephoto lens in portrait mode. So if you are looking for a lot of background compression because you want to isolate your subject, you're just not able to get the same type of look with the Pixel 8 Pro. So it goes without saying that the point in this category goes to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Moving on, we're going to compare cinematic mode, which is also just known as the blur setting on the Pixel 8 Pro. First up, here's video number 1. And here's video number 2. Video number 2 was taken with the iPhone. Next, we have video number 3. And here's video number 4. Video number 4 was taken with the iPhone. Quite honestly, this category isn't even close, and it doesn't require much explanation. Cinematic mode on the iPhone 15 Pro Max completely blows the Pixel 8 Pro out of the water. The edge detection on the iPhone is clearly superior. Have a look at this shot of my professional camera. You can see that the iPhone does a very good job of isolating it from the background, whereas the Pixel is struggling to figure out where those edges are, especially around that Canon logo, and it looks terrible. Not only that, but the iPhone can also shoot in 4K while using cinematic mode, while I was limited to HD while shooting with the Pixel. The only part of this comparison that was actually evenly matched was the rack focusing effect. I thought that both phones did a good job of faking that nice smooth transition from the foreground to the background that you can only really get with the professional camera. But nonetheless, the point in this category also goes to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Moving on, we're going to compare the ultra wide lens. First up, here's picture number 1 and picture number 2. Picture number 1 was taken with the iPhone. Next, we have picture number 3 and 4. Picture number 3 was taken with the iPhone. And finally, we have picture number 5 and 6. Picture number 5 was taken with the iPhone. Now, I expected the Pixel 8 Pro to dominate this category because there's been a lot of hype around the upgraded 48 megapixel sensor while using the ultra wide lens, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max is still limited to 12 megapixels. Interestingly, my opinion was actually a little bit mixed. If we zoom into these two pictures, it becomes very clear that the Pixel 8 Pro has a lot more detail, both in the concrete and in the flowers. Or here's another example. If we zoom into the water that you can see here in the background, the Pixel 8 Pro is able to resolve a lot more fine detail in the wave pattern. So yes, from an overall sharpness perspective, the Pixel 8 Pro is the winner. But there are also a couple of additional factors that you should be considering here, which are corner sharpness and distortion. I talk about both of these quite a lot inside of Speedy Photographer, which is my full online photography course. But yes, these are the two most common weaknesses of ultra-wide lenses, even when using professional gear. So let's have a look at the corner sharpness, starting with the Pixel 8 Pro. As we start from the middle of the picture and slowly pan out to the corner, we can see that the picture slowly begins to fall apart. Contrast that with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, where the picture does seem to actually retain a little bit more detail as I pan out to the corner. Now, in fairness, we're comparing a 48 megapixel picture to a 12 megapixel picture. So the results for the Pixel 8 Pro are completely unforgiving because you can make out so much detail. But take this information for what you will. Now let's have a look at distortion, and let me quickly explain what that means. When you shoot with an ultra-wide lens, the edges of your picture will begin to stretch. You can see that the dock is beginning to expand with the ultra-wide lens, whereas it looks flat and straight with the standard lens. Now, lens distortion can be corrected, and both cameras do a pretty good job, but from my perspective, I thought that the iPhone 15 Pro Max looked slightly better. So the question you have to ask yourself here is, does any of what I'm saying matter? And the funny thing is, even though I'm pointing it out, I would say no, because very few people are going to pixel peep the corners of your ultra-wide pictures to see how sharp or distorted they look. Your subject is usually in the middle of the frame. And because of this, I give the point in this category to the Pixel 8 Pro. Now, the next thing we're going to compare is the telephoto lens. First up, here's picture number 1 and picture number 2. Picture number 2 was taken with the iPhone. Next, we have picture number 3 and 4. Picture number 4 was taken with the iPhone. And finally, we have picture number 5 and 6. Picture number 5 was taken with the iPhone. Now, this category had a very clear winner for me. When shooting with the telephoto lens, you need to be able to resolve a lot of detail at a distance. And the Pixel 8 Pro dominated with the 48 megapixel sensor because, again, the iPhone 15 Pro Max was limited to 12 megapixels with this lens. The Pixel very clearly reproduced more fine detail, whereas I found that the iPhone was doing a lot more computational processing to try and accomplish the same thing. It's very obvious when you zoom into text or letters. With the iPhone, you can see the processing artifacts all around the edges, whereas with the Pixel, you just get pure sharpness with a lot of detail. So no further explanation required. In this category, point goes to the Pixel 8 Pro. Finally, we're going to compare the standard lens. Now, when it comes to the standard lens, my focus is going to be a little bit different. I want to look specifically at color rendering because the iPhone 15 Pro Max uses a 48 megapixel sensor, which compares very closely with the 50 megapixel sensor in the Pixel 8 Pro. Now, if you really care about sharpness, here's a side-by-side comparison. Personally, I thought that the iPhone 15 Pro Max did a better job in terms of resolving detail, but again, when you're shooting around the 50 megapixel range, it doesn't really matter unless you're going to be cropping aggressively. Now, with that all being said, first up, here's picture number 1 and picture number 2. If you guessed picture number 1 was taken with the iPhone, you got it right. Next, we have picture number 3 and 4. Picture number 4 was taken with the iPhone. And finally, we have picture number 5 and 6. Picture number 6 was taken with the iPhone. So when I look at some of these pictures from the perspective of a photographer who is caring about things like accurate color reproduction, I would say that the iPhone 15 Pro Max does a better job overall. My shots taken with the iPhone felt warmer, more natural, and more representative of what I was actually looking at. And more importantly, I found they compared nicely with what I would expect out of my professional camera gear. I also found that the iPhone did a better job of retaining contrast, whereas the Pixel 8 Pro tried to squeeze every little bit of shadow and highlight detail out of the shot. This was definitely apparent while shooting at night. Have a look at these two pictures. I can make out so much more of the building and the sidewalk and the tree, but is that what matters here? The HDR effect is extremely popular, and for good reason because it often reflects what we see in real life, but I thought that the Pixel 8 Pro took it a little too far. None of this shadow detail here in the tree was actually visible to me while I was shooting. Once again, I want to reiterate that this is all very subjective. You might completely disagree with my assessment, but I'm just sharing with you what I look for when I'm reviewing my own pictures in a professional context. And in this category, I thought that the point should go to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now, to wrap up this video, I want to address a few comments that I'm sure some of you will have when it comes to this comparison. First comment, you should have edited these pictures instead of using the standard camera features. Editing these pictures would have opened this comparison up to even more subjectivity because it leaves everything open to my interpretation as the photographer. The only benefit to editing would have been to show you some of the computational features available on each phone, but my goal with this comparison was to show you how a consumer will experience the camera without any type of additional processing. Second comment, you never tested the front-facing camera. That's because I can summarize my thoughts on the front-facing camera in one sentence. I would advise against using it for any type of photography other than a selfie or a video call because the rear-facing cameras are better in every single way. But if you asked me which front-facing camera that I prefer, it would again be the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The colors were more flattering to a human subject. Third comment, you're probably just a paid Apple fanboy because you have an Apple Watch on your wrist and you've been favoring the iPhone in every single comparison. Truth be told, I could care less about which of these phones actually won this comparison because I would never use either phone in a professional photography context. This was purely intended to be an informative comparison, and if you think I'm a fanboy because of that, so be it. Now, if you found this comparison helpful and you're looking to learn a thing or two about photography and how to monetize your work, you might want to check out my online photography school, Speedy Photographer. I have hundreds of students who are all blown away by the quality of my training material. Here's one student who started by taking pictures that looked like this and eventually began taking pictures like this while also making money doing it. So be sure to check that out if you're interested. Link in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more valuable content just like this, and I'll see you in the next video.